Centuries ago, the future of a royal child could decide the fate of an entire kingdom. From the moment they were born, heirs were groomed for greatness, trained to command armies, broker alliances, and rule with authority. Everything about their upbringing was designed to prepare them for the weight of the crown. But what happened when a royal child was born different? What if they couldn't speak clearly, couldn't walk without difficulty, or found learning a struggle? To kings and queens of the past, this was far more than a personal heartbreak. It was a scandal. In royal courts obsessed with image and perfection, such differences were seen as dangerous flaws. And in many cases, the solution was brutal. These children were hidden from public view, sent away to institutions, or even declared dead while still living. Their very existence threatened the carefully crafted illusion of a flawless royal bloodline. This is the forgotten history of royal children born with Down syndrome, a genetic condition feared and misunderstood for centuries. And it's the story of the shocking ways powerful families dealt with them in order to protect their public image. Down syndrome is caused by the presence of an extra chromosome. While most people have 46 chromosomes, individuals with Down syndrome have 47, an extra copy of chromosome 21. This subtle genetic difference changes how their bodies and brains develop, influencing physical appearance, muscle tone, and intellectual abilities. People with Down syndrome often share certain features: almond-shaped eyes, a flatter facial profile, smaller ears, and sometimes a single crease in the palm. They may also face health challenges such as heart conditions, thyroid problems, and developmental delays. Today, we understand that people with Down syndrome can live rich, fulfilling lives, attending school, working, building relationships, and achieving remarkable things. But in the centuries before genetics was understood, these differences were surrounded by fear, superstition, and prejudice. Some saw them as a curse from God, others as proof of weak bloodlines or moral failing, and in the rarefied world of royalty, where every heir was expected to embody strength and perfection, a child with Down syndrome was often treated as a shame, too heavy to bear. Nerissa Bowes-Lyon was born in 1919, and her younger sister Catherine followed in 1926. They were first cousins of Queen Elizabeth II, part of the extended British royal family. From a young age, it became clear both sisters had severe intellectual disabilities. Historians believe that one or both may have had Down syndrome or a closely related condition. But instead of being raised within the royal household, they were placed in the Royal Earlswood Hospital, a long-term care institution in Surrey. Once sent there, they were effectively erased from royal life. Family records even listed them as deceased, despite the fact that both were alive and living in the hospital. Nerissa remained there until her death in 1986. Catherine spent nearly her entire life at the same institution, dying in 2014. Reports suggest they were rarely visited by relatives, and for decades, few outside the hospital walls knew they were members of the royal family. The truth only emerged in the 1980s, when journalists uncovered their existence. Public outrage followed, sparking debates about the morality of hiding family members with disabilities. Even in the modern 20th century, the royal instinct to protect image over compassion remains strong. Born in 1915 to Crown Prince Wilhelm of Prussia, Princess Alexandrine was diagnosed with Down syndrome, although the term was not widely used at the time. Her life unfolded differently from Nerissa and Catherine's. Alexandrine's parents chose not to institutionalize her. She stayed with her family and occasionally appeared in public. Some family photographs and commemorative postcards even included her. But she was still kept away from royal duties and the intense scrutiny of public life. She attended a special school and lived quietly, shielded from the demands of royal responsibilities. She lived into adulthood, passing away in 1980, and by all accounts enjoyed a relatively comfortable life. Yet the underlying royal attitude was still clear: a child with disabilities might be loved within the family, but they would not be part of the monarchy's public face. Anne de Gaulle was born in 1928, the beloved daughter of Charles de Gaulle, who would later become President of France, and his wife, Yvonne. While Anne was not technically royal, she was part of one of Europe's most influential families. Anne was born with Down syndrome. Unlike many children of her time, she was not placed in an institution. She was raised at home, cherished deeply by her parents. Charles de Gaulle was especially devoted to her, with accounts describing a warm and tender bond between them. Still, her condition was never openly discussed, and she rarely appeared at public events. Tragically, Anne died at the age of 20 from pneumonia. Her death devastated her parents. In her memory, Yvonne de Gaulle founded the Fondation Anne de Gaulle, a hospital dedicated to caring for children with disabilities. Anne's story stands out as an example of love and inclusion at a time when such attitudes were rare. But even in her case, the weight of social pressure meant her life was largely kept out of the public eye. The stories of Nerissa and Catherine Bowes-Lyon, Princess Alexandrine of Prussia, and Anne de Gaulle all took place in the 20th century, an era we often think of as modern and enlightened. Yet even then, powerful families chose secrecy over openness when faced with a child who did not meet society's narrow definition of perfection. But if this was the reality in the 1900s, imagine what life must have been like for such children centuries earlier, when superstition and fear ruled over science and compassion. In the Middle Ages and early modern times, the treatment of children born with visible differences or intellectual disabilities could be unimaginably harsh. The historical record on this is limited, often because families deliberately erased evidence, but enough clues remain to paint a grim picture. Children born into royal or noble families with such conditions might be quietly sent away to remote country estates. Others were handed over to monasteries or convents, where they would live out their lives in isolation, far from the intrigues and gossip of the royal court. And in the most extreme cases, some historians believe that infants with severe disabilities may have been quietly killed shortly after birth. Direct proof is rare. These acts would have been carefully concealed, but whispers of such tragedies appear in scattered chronicles and family accounts. Why such secrecy? Because in an age when rulers claimed divine approval for their reign, the birth of a child perceived as imperfect could be seen as a sign that God had withdrawn his favor. This was not just a private sorrow. It could spark political instability, feed rumors of a cursed bloodline, or invite rivals to challenge the throne. It's important to understand that this culture of hiding children with disabilities was not unique to one country or one royal family. It stretched across Europe, Asia, and beyond, anywhere monarchies relied on image as a source of power. Public perception was everything. Kings and queens crafted a vision of their dynasty as strong, noble, and destined to rule. Any perceived flaw, whether it was a political scandal, a scandalous love affair, or a child with a disability, was a threat to that image. And so secrecy became a survival strategy. The cost, however, was devastating. It meant countless children were denied the love, recognition, and opportunities they deserved. Instead of being embraced, they were hidden. Instead of being celebrated, they were erased from history. For those sent away, life was often lonely. Institutions and remote estates could be cold, understaffed, and ill-equipped to provide proper care. In monasteries or convents, the children might receive basic shelter and food, but little stimulation or affection. Some lived out their days in near total isolation, never seeing the bustling courts they had been born into. Their birthdays passed unmarked, their milestones unnoticed. Letters and visits from family were rare, if they came at all. This erasure extended to the historical record. Many of these children's names are lost forever, because their existence was intentionally omitted from official documents. In some cases, family trees were altered to pretend they had died in infancy. To the outside world, they never existed. It can be tempting to look at this history as something distant, just another dark chapter from a crueler age. But the truth is, the attitudes that allowed these children to be hidden away lingered well into living memory. The same fear of judgment, the same pressure to appear perfect, continued to influence decisions within royal households even in the 20th century, as the stories of Nerissa, Catherine, Alexandrine, and Anne prove. The silence surrounding these children has another consequence. It leaves us with unanswered questions. How many royal sons and daughters were hidden away? How many might have thrived if given the chance? We will likely never know. But we can say with certainty that their stories matter. By acknowledging them now, we not only give dignity to those forgotten lives, but we also confront the dangerous idea that some people are less worthy of love, visibility, or opportunity. Today, the world looks very different for people with Down syndrome. Advances in medicine, education, and social awareness have opened doors that were once locked shut. Children with Down syndrome now have access to schooling, healthcare, and support systems that allow them to live full, meaningful lives. They play sports, act in films, run businesses, teach, and compete on the world stage. More importantly, they are loved openly by their families, their communities, and often by strangers who see them for who they truly are, not just for a diagnosis. But when we look back just a few generations, we see how recent this progress really is. History often celebrates the dramatic and the visible, great battles, powerful rulers, monumental decisions. But some of its deepest injustices are quiet ones, the pain of those who were deliberately forgotten. The children we've discussed today lived in times when disability was something to be hidden, something shameful. Yet their lives were as precious as any king, queen, prince, or princess. By remembering them now, we give them what they were denied: dignity, recognition, and a place in history. We also remind ourselves how fragile progress can be. It's easy to look around today and assume the fight for equality and inclusion is over. But discrimination, stigma, and exclusion still exist, sometimes in more subtle forms. And if history teaches us anything, it's that compassion can vanish quickly when image and reputation take precedence over humanity.